Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Maqbool with you at PTV World. An unfortunate end to a very unfortunate series of events last night. And we've seen, of course, that there has been a lot of hue and cry about what has happened. But what, of course, is the most tragic part of it all is that it is the unfortunate, tragic loss of lives that we've all bared. And there are lots of people in the security personnel who have sacrificed their own lives with regards to what has happened on the streets yesterday, and that is something that you cannot replace. The damage is irreversible, not just only for those people, but of course also in general to the public, to the country at large, and to our economy as well. And so our hearts, of course, goes out to the people who have lost their lives and who have sacrificed their lives for the protection of the citizens of Pakistan. And it's unfortunate that they're the ones who are always sacrificing their lives. But when we talk about the overall the political situation of the country and the way that the protest rally was conducted, that is in an entirely different episode as well, where we've seen that the supporters of PTI have been very violent on the streets. They have also burned and torched a tree. They have also attacked buildings. And unfortunately, because of all of this, the entire idea of a peaceful protest, which is the democratic right of any political party or an individual or people of the country, is misused and abused. And that gives out a completely wrong and inaccurate impression of the way that Pakistani people and as citizens interact and the way our democratic principles are valued in the country. That, of course, is one aspect of what happened yesterday. The rest, of course, with reference to the way it's going to affect the political scenario of the country, whether or not the entire objective of the march that was then called off is being even met at the moment. Has this added any sort of value to any political party and their own objectives and the narrative that it continues to spread? And then, of course, the institutions such as the Supreme Court and their sanctity, whether or not that was upheld. All of these questions point out to the larger concerns that we have with reference to the democracy and the continuance of democracy within our country and the way we want the future scenario to evolve, considering the economic situation that Pakistan currently is facing. So that is going to be our focus of discussion today in the debate, and we'll try to figure out what is going to be happening in the days to come and try to analyze what has happened yesterday in terms of the way the accountability and responsibility lies upon not only the office bearers but also the public at large. For this and more, I've been joined in the studios as always by Farrukh Pitafi and Raja Faisal, and we're going to be joined online by our guests as well. We've been joined by Mr. Ahmed Jawad, who's the lead PMLN. We've also been joined by Sardar Balakhsher Khosa, who's an advocate of the Supreme Court. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being with us. Before we start the discussion, we're going to take a look at a small package on yesterday's events prepared by our team, and then we'll continue our discussion.
Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, while continuing its tradition of mob-style politics based on a false narrative, raided the twin cities on Wednesday. The raid ground everything to a standstill as people's lives were affected following the violence after PPI mobsters damaged public and private properties.
कहाँ की सियासत है कि लोगों की इमलाक को नुकसान पहुँचाना, लोगों को मारना, पीटना, पुलिस को निशाना बनाना।
हर मुहिब वतन शहरी जो है ना इसकी पुरजोर मजम्मत करता है। इससे ना सिर्फ अवामी ज़िंदगी मुतासर हुई है, बल्कि देखें हमारा वफाकी दारुल हुकूमत जहाँ जो तोड़ फोड़ की है, इससे उसका हुस्न बुरी तरह मुतासर हुआ है।
PTI ने पुलिस को मारा है और हमारा मेट्रो स्टेशन वगैरह तोड़ा है। ये मेट्रो हमारी ज़रूरत है, इन लोगों ने ये हमारी ज़रूरत को नुकसान पहुँचाया है।
PTI mob attacked public transportation, destroyed metro stations, torching the staff at public facilities and battered the security personnel deputed for public safety. The brutal attacks on lives and properties by PTI workers was a glaring proof of Pakistan People's Party hunger for power and quest for anarchy and total disregard of constitutional values. However, the lackluster participation in PTI's rally clearly showed that people not only reject PTI's version of politics, their false narrative and their undemocratic values.
Well, you heard the report, and in fact, another thing I was noticing while driving to work today was, of course, the plastic bags and the leftovers of yesterday's events, something which, of course, is also very bad for the environment and the way the PTI supporters have been the champion of fighting against climate change and plastic waste. Unfortunately, that was also disregarded, but that also points towards the individual responsibility we all have towards the environment as well, which continues to be a problem. And we'll talk more about that as well. I'll start with you, Ahmed Jawad Saab. When we look at the events of yesterday, of course, we want to be able to analyze who won, who lost, what it is that we've all gained or lost in this entire matter. Of course, these are measures that have been taken by the PTI supporters or other political parties and institutions for the benefit of Pakistan, because that's what's in the interest of everyone. But at the end of the day, the way these political rallies have been carried out by the people, the way the disregard has been shown not just to property and the environment, but also people and the security forces, is quite unfortunate and condemnable. And that, of course, points us towards the larger question of how are we going to be able to reconcile the national interest and be able to maintain the bigger objective to act in ways that are in benefit for the country, rather than the kind of interests, the vested interests that have been portrayed by different political parties and leaders, and which amount to really nothing, because at the end of the day, what has been achieved because of yesterday?
Sana, first of all, let me tell you that I came to Islamabad in 1999. And it's almost 23 years that I'm in Islamabad. I have seen this beautiful, peaceful city for now over 2 decades. And yes, there has been political turbulence all these years. I can recall when Nawaz Sharif government was removed here and the military takeover, I have witnessed that. But even those were so peaceful. I should not say a military takeover or a dictator taking over the government is something like peaceful, but that was also peaceful. That few military personnel, they came and they took over the government. There was nothing on Islamabad. No political party ever tried to disrupt the peace of Islamabad like we have seen yesterday. But this yesterday needs to be understood, that how this culture of political confrontation in Islamabad started. It started with Tahir al-Qadri. When he came from Canada, it was during the PPP government, and we can very well recall that what all happened in Islamabad. Then we saw 2014 when Tahir al-Qadri again came from Canada, and this time he had an adopted cousin, Imran Niazi, with him, and together they had that dharna. And you can still recall everything related to that 126, whatever happened in Islamabad. Everybody can recall that. I also recall the last day of that dharna when I was there, and there was a few dozen people left to listen to Imran Khan's last closing speech of the 126th dharna. This is what happens at the end of the day. And after that, we have seen it is, I would say, a third or fourth episode of similar political culture. Now, what is this political culture? This political culture is about, if I am in the government, everything is okay. Chief Election Commissioner is okay. Chief Justice is okay. Supreme Court is good. Establishment is good. Everybody is good. If I am out of the government, constitutionally, not thrown out, constitutionally, if I am moved out of the government, then Supreme Court is wrong, High Court is wrong, Parliament is wrong, Chief Election Commissioner is wrong, establishment is not neutral. So every sort of statements, and that ultimately resulted into what we witnessed yesterday. Yesterday, the beautiful Islamabad was burning. The trees were burning. This is the same trees, perhaps, which Imran Niazi had been talking about, the billion tree program. But what his team has done yesterday, they even burnt the metro station, which is the transportation for a common man. That was burnt. This was the agenda. And what happened at the end of the day? Similar, like after 126 days, Imran Khan was addressing. I was standing there, few dozen people. And yesterday, after doing all this thing, he just called off the dharna. He went to Banigala. So I think nation needs to realize, especially the educated people who have been misled,
Right,
under
of
this
course,
external
absolutely. It is extremely
conspiracy
important for, of course,
theory.
a nation to be able to act and think more critically as well. Mr. Khosa, when we talk about the events of yesterday, how do you see the role of the Supreme Court in all of this? Do you think that the Supreme Court as an institution took a hit in any way? And also in terms of its orders being violated specifically, such as assigning a particular area for the protest to be held, and then of course that wasn't where the entire march actually culminated. Do you think in any way the Supreme Court has taken a hit yesterday? Yes. Khosa Saab, can you hear me?
His image is frozen, so perhaps there is communication.
I think we have lost our contact with Khosa Saab, but we'll try and reestablish that again, because we really want to be able to talk about the legal matters as well. But let's talk a little bit more about what has happened yesterday and the way it's going to impact politics and the future of Pakistan and the way that people think. Farrukh, earlier, Ahmed Jawad Sahab was talking about how the people need to be able to perhaps think more clearly. But then again, when we see the political situation and the way that such narratives influence public opinion, it's difficult. I understand that it is important for the people to be able to respect norms and values and to act and have some sort of moral accountability. But when you talk about rallies or protests or people in large groups, does that still exist, or can we really put the blame on individuals acting in a crowd, or does that go that accountability go towards the leadership who's actually getting the people together?
Right, Sana, a very good question. In this country, you can blame anybody, especially because we are talking about a post-truth society. The entire world might be introduced to post-truthism now, but Pakistan has been living with it for quite some time. I mean, in a country where Bhutto and Zia-ul-Haq both were shaheed, right? They were both called martyrs. You always realize that there is a split in the perception of reality. But having said that, particularly yesterday, because I tend to gravitate towards center, and the best thing about such a position is that you can communicate with both sides. I've been actually following the pictures that were coming out of timelines of various friends, right? In PTI as well as the government. So on one side, of course, the government pictures were showing us how public property was destroyed. And on the other side, PTI was claiming that it was also torture or beaten, right? So these are two aspects which are quite interesting, but what is happening? PTI was ruling this country only a couple of months ago, and it is a stakeholder in the political system of the country. And then you have these state institutions. In the end, I ask you, who lost?
Exactly.
Was it only PTI? Was it only government? Was it the state apparatus? No, it was people of Pakistan. Yesterday, IMF was deliberating over the resumption of the program that was needed. And what happened? In the end, we saw, perhaps because of these pictures that were coming out of Pakistan, they must have thought that we cannot actually, expect to stand with this kind of chaos, right? Similarly, when it comes to Yassin Malik, that also happened yesterday. We saw statements coming from army yesterday. We saw the statements coming from the Prime Minister today. But the fact is that the collective whole of the nation response was missing. And because there was fire in Islamabad, because greenery matters to most of us, I have a growing family, right? What you are doing is you are losing people like me, because my daughters were saying that, are we going to live with this vandalism for the entirety of our lives? So the first thing, what will they think? If they are growing up, they are going to think that they'll find an opportunity abroad and leave the country. They are bright kids. And that must be happening with all the working class people. So at this moment, remember that whenever we fight, regardless of who is right, who is wrong, we are fighting, and the world is seeing as Pakistanis fighting Pakistanis. In the end, it is Pakistan whose image loses.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Sana,
yes, Faisal.
because yesterday I was there, and of course I have witnessed everything. Yes, you're right. The
Khosa Saab,
trees,
I'll come to you. Yes.
The trees, they were getting toshed. especially the ones which are in the middle of both of the roads of metro. Yes, they were getting toshed, and at the same time I was asking the educated ones why it is happening, and they were saying we don't know who's doing it. Then I said, if you have brought people here, then of course you should be knowing that who's doing it. Then suddenly I think few of the PTI leaders, they started telling people over the microphones that nobody should do that. But at the same time, to avoid the effects of tear gas, they have been collecting branches of the trees and they were burning it out. Number one. Number two, there were constant noise. People were having obviously sticks with them and they were smashing with the railing of metro, so it was creating too much noise. But there was a humanitarian aspect as well. I saw a few families with their kids in their cars. They came and they were opening their boot, and in that boot, of course, they knew that water shortage is there. People were asking for water, for drinking water, so they brought drinking water. So that aspect was there as well. And them people, I mean, I talked to one of the families and they said, regardless of our political affiliations, I mean, they said, we are politically apolitical, but there is an humanitarian aspect. People who have gathered here, they are humans, so we are giving them water.
Right, and regarding the trees and the branches being collected, I think in the end they decided that they don't need to sever the branches from the trees, and they just set fire to all the trees there.
Absolutely, and unfortunately we still haven't been able to establish a contact with Khosa Saab, but we're trying to do the same. Ahmed Jawad Saab, when we talk about the way that people have interacted, it's also something that has always concerned me in terms of whether or not when we see such large crowds actually gathering together, whether or not we have the kind of support the kind of support that the political parties are talking about, whether or not that actually exists. There are a lot of people who perhaps join such political rallies for their own personal incentives, be that may a packet of food. And that is of major concern as well, because when you see people gathering in for a political purpose or for a higher purpose, then it's understandable maybe for them to expect from them to act more rationally. But if you have people there who are just perhaps coming here for entertainment's sake or some other interest, then how are we going to be able to hold them accountable? Just hold that thought and I'll come to you. I want to quickly also go to Khosa Saab and talk about the legal matters, since I'm afraid we'll lose him again. Khosa Saab, can we talk about the issue of the Supreme Court? I'll repeat my question that I earlier asked for you in case you didn't hear it. Whether or not you think the Supreme Court took any hit in any way yesterday, whether or not there was any violation of the Supreme Court's orders, and overall, what sort of a role do you think the Supreme Court played in all of this?
You see, where your political system does not mean the government. Political system means the opposition, the parliamentarians. When somebody is in a government and somebody is holding a position as the leader of the opposition. So I think so what has happened yesterday, that is a disastrous situation. And even what we are leading towards the people of Pakistan, what we are teaching them to burn the trees, to burn your metro, it is a public property. We need to take care of ourselves. We need to love our country. But you see where the executive completely fails, definitely the constitution awakens. The suo motu can be taken on those issues where there are national issues which cannot be sorted out by the government or by the executive. You see the way every road was blocked. Even if somebody has to go for like an emergency to the hospital, he or she cannot reach. And even people cannot reach the court of law who were on pre-arrest bails. And even the country was burning. Is this a Pakistan? The Supreme Court has rightly decided that evidence, and as per the directions of the Supreme Court of Pakistan, they have said so that you need to sit together, the opposition and the government, and to come on a conclusion that whether elections should be held in such and such time, such and such date, because the Constitution of Islamic Republic of Pakistan very loudly and clearly says the opposition leader and the government has to sit on the national issues, resolve them up, sort them out, and to decide what is or going to be the date for the elections to be held. So this is how it should be. When the state has failed, the executive has failed, Supreme Court has exercised their jurisdiction rightly in accordance with the Constitution of Islamic Republic of Pakistan. So to my view and to the orders which are read as the Supreme Court of Pakistan, yes, the government violated so many orders of the Supreme Court of Pakistan. Even at Islamabad High Court, it was being told not to have these stoppers, not to stop the people, not to put containers. But on the other hand, you have to see we are a state where there are suicide bombers, where people take advantage of the political system, where assassination goes on. We have had much bloodshed of our political system and our leaders. We have lost them. Now there is no space, there is no place where we afford to lose even Imran Khan, even Shehbaz Sharif, even Bilawal Bhutto. So these all are Pakistanis. We need to first think about Pakistan,
Right,
and then we
absolutely.
have to
And I
see
understand the point you're making, Khosa
who
Saab, but
becomes the government.
what I also
Yes.
want to understand here is in a scenario where you have a peaceful protest and there are negotiations and things work out, that's perhaps a different scenario. But in a scenario such as that which happened yesterday is perhaps different in terms of the kind of violations that happened, the kind of clashes that happened, the loss of property and the loss of lives, and the way that the people acted and the leadership acted. So I want to understand what sort of legal consequences do actually exist for such moves or measures taken by the people or the leadership of any political parties. I understand what you're saying as an overall what should be done, but whatever happened yesterday, aren't there any legal consequences for that?
You see, when the executive fails, so rightly the government has called the Pakistan Army. They can call the Rangers for the peace to be taken for existence of the peace. Are we barbarian? Are we living in a country which is like Banana Republic? We are living in a country where we need peace. We are like we are having destruction of our metro. We are having destruction of our trees. Is this a Pakistan? Is this our leaders? Even I will request Imran Khan, I will request Prime Minister of this country, I'll request the leaders, Bilawal Bhutto, I'll request Fazlur Rahman Sahab, if for God's sake, love Pakistan, first Pakistan, and stop your people who are having a destruction of the buildings, metro. These are meant for the people of
Right,
Pakistan.
Khosa Saab, and
And
I
yes,
understand what should
where
be
you
and
violate
must be
the rules
done
and law,
by the
the
leadership
law
and
has
the
to take.
people, but what has been done, what about that now? Is this just going to be pushed under the carpet?
Not at
Can
all.
people
I
just
think
get
so.
away
The
with
legal
just
action
coming out
should
on
be.
the streets like
I
that?
think so. That you see, the legal action should be taken against those people, even if they belong to any party who has taken the law into their hands. They should be dealt with iron hands, and there should be FIRs against them, and they should be sent behind the gallows of the law. So they should not be spared at all because the law has to take its place. You should go for the political reconciliation. You sit with the leader of the house, you sit with the prime minister. When the leader of the
All right. And
opposition
Khosa
is
Saab,
adamant
we'll
and not
continue
there,
that
so sit
discussion.
with the
Farrukh, you
prime
wanted to
minister
add
or the
something with
government.
regards to the Supreme Court and the legal
Right,
consequences? Yes.
right. Although I think that we should be going to Ahmed Jawad Sahab now, but I very quickly wanted to just point out that in the past this has happened as well. You are too young to remember, but in back in 70s, 80s, this used to be norm where political parties would burn a lot of things down. But I think that regarding the consequences, look, the Supreme Court of Pakistan, if it wants to take up a matter of contempt, it has disqualified sitting prime ministers in the past as well. So the consequences, the precedents are there. But whenever such a situation takes place, the point is that hotheads usually dominate the situation. And in that, cool-minded people, cool-minded institutions, their efficacy becomes very important. It could have been done that you could have actually penalized PTI for a lot, or for that matter, the government. But the point is that if an institution wants to preserve public peace, and if it wants to ensure that this country moves ahead, I think I'm grateful that those cool heads prevailed and they are around. And for that, our Supreme Court of Pakistan and other institutions that might have helped, their help is most welcome.
Yeah, but Ahmed Saab, if we look at yesterday's intervention by obviously Chief Justice of Pakistan, I think it was the turning point when everything was going, out of the window. They just intervened and they calmed the situation down at that time. Do you think that this intervention should have been taking place around 5-6 days ago, so that everything calms down and starts with calming down, and we right at the end saw that, of course, from the government side as well as PTI side, it was endorsed, and the position which was taken by Supreme Court, it was endorsed by the both of the side, and it should have been done a lot earlier.
And because we Pakistanis like to debate the past so much, Ahmed Jawad Sahab, can you also tell me where to find a time machine so that we can go back in time and change all that?
Okay, Farrukh, first of all, you made a very sentimental statement when your daughters, they asked this question whether we should live in this country. I think, Farrukh, I also have daughters, and I'm sure they are also watching these things with the similar questions. But I think now the question is also in the minds of parents, whether the future of our children is safe in this country, the kind of political culture and the political cult we are seeing in this country. Regarding your question, Chief Justice intervention, I think the yesterday event was okay till the time the permission was granted to PTI to hold their Jalsa in G9 or G11, G10 area.
H9.
And from there, Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, they managed to penetrate to the D-Chok. So it was a violation of Chief Justice decision. In my opinion, perhaps this should be handled by the executive. And when Supreme Court gives a decision, how will Supreme Court take the responsibility and the implementation of that decision? You know, if they gave this decision, okay, you can do your Jalsa in G9 area, and then the party does not follow that decision and the instructions, and they come to the D-Chok, and then what happened? So can, in such situation, Supreme Court should intervene, because it has not helped the cause. You have given permission, and the permission has been extended to more violence, and what we saw yesterday. And the termination of the dharna, that was a sudden Imran Khan's decision, like he always does, that he announced after making his speech, and he went to Banigala. So I would say that yesterday's intervention by the Supreme Court, it has some question marks. That how it should be done in the future, I think it needs to be deliberated. Who should take the responsibility? When you say that there is a sitting government and it is their responsibility and the law enforcement agencies, then the decisions are taken by the Supreme Court. Then how do the law enforcement agencies and the government are going to face the consequences of those decisions? Yesterday, whatever happened, that was the consequence of the decision which was permitting the Jalsa to PTI, and they did not follow. And then Supreme Court does not have that capacity to implement their decision.
Ahmed Jawad Sahab, can I ask a cross question, because it is very important. You know, Supreme Court's job is to interpret the Constitution of Pakistan, and Constitution of Pakistan ensures or guarantees peaceful right to protest. Although it was, of course, we saw that there was involvement of, violence as well. But we can certainly say that the Supreme Court of Pakistan could not foresee it. How could they know that this is going to happen? If violations take place, that is another matter. But do you think that the Supreme Court should not have guaranteed that there was peaceful protest in Islamabad?
I think, Farrukh, just like you or myself or anybody in this country, I am sure judges of Supreme Court, they know how do PTI conduct itself when they are doing such kind of long march and dharna. We should only recall one telephone call of Imran Khan Niazi in 2014 when he's talking to President Dr. Arif Alvi, and Dr. Arif Alvi is informing us कि PTV के ऊपर हमला हो गया है, and he's saying very good, अच्छा हो गया है, good. जब आपको when you know how this leader really acts, there is a past attached to Imran Khan. There are incidents that how does his followers they act and conduct. I don't think so that judges would not know that what is their intention. They are not just here for holding a jalsa. They are here to create chaos. They are here to create violence. They are here to create a crisis in the country. This should be known. We cannot say that the judges would not know that what is going to happen. I think they are more aware than myself or yourself.
All right.
Yeah,
But
Advocate Khosa.
Yeah.
Yeah, Advocate Khosa, if we look at the chain of events which was taking place, of course, we lost one of the policemen. He got martyred in all of this brawl, and of course there were many others who were affected by it.
Also died because of a van that actually collapsed.
Yeah, van collapsed, and all of this, when all of this was taking place, how do you see the decision of intervention by the Supreme Court? I mean, was it timely at that time and it was justified, sir?
And
Absolutely,
Jawad Sahab
it was
earlier was
justified.
talking about how the Supreme Court perhaps should have realized or understood the kind of precedents that there have been in the past, and perhaps have had a more preemptive approach to what happened yesterday. And in light of that, should have been perhaps more aware of the fact that the protests are going to turn violent.
And could you even preempt such a incursion?
Very loaded question.
Khosa Sahab, all questions for you.
Ji, absolutely. You see, the law cannot allow the people or the political parties or the political leaders to bulldoze the system or to bulldoze the constitution. This is bulldozing, because if you don't like some decisions and if you don't like to hold some portfolio as a prime minister, and if you are being removed, if you are being sacked by vote of no confidence, it does not mean you are going to burn everything or you are going to start having critics on the Supreme Court of Pakistan. Definitely where the state fails and where the public went violent and it was out of the boundaries and control of the executive, then definitely the law permits and the constitution permits the Supreme Court of Pakistan to keep law and order situation intact. So the intervention of Supreme Court was absolutely needed, required, in accordance with the law, in accordance with the constitution.
Right. So,
And
Khosa Sahab, in
rightly,
that case, do you think that there should be a contempt of court case on Imran Khan?
There was.
And that it should
well,
be heard?
absolutely, Imran Khan is not out of the boundaries of the contempt of court. If he has taken the law into his hands, I still remember, and you still remember that when Nawaz Sharif was the prime minister, Imran Khan tore into pieces the bills, electricity bills, that it has exceeded. So that if that he is going to do, and if now he is in opposition, he should not be allowed to take the law into his own hands. And yes, Supreme Court can intervene and can call him in the contempt of court proceedings. And I think so this is the right time that we need to be reasonable enough to behave into the ambit of the Constitution of Islamic Republic of Pakistan, in which the law runs, in which the political parties run. But you cannot make your people violent, your supporters violent. It is the leader who can stop them, and it is the leader who makes them destroy everything. So you see, the Supreme Court, I think so, should issue a contempt notice to Imran Khan that what you are doing and what you are up to. You should not act against the Pakistan, against the state, against the green flag, against the creator, Qaeda Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who has created this Pakistan for us, not for having violence on the street, burning trees or metro or killing people or shooting. So you see, everybody needs to behave, and even anybody can be called by the Supreme Court of Pakistan in a contempt notice who is going to take the law into his own hands.
Right. Earlier, Sana, when I was asking question, Faisal said that my question was loaded. It was very clear question. Let me just elaborate. The Honorable Supreme Court's words are words, right? They become, rule when executive implements them.
Absolutely.
Honorable Supreme Court doesn't have any physical power, and when it comes to the executive, we have seen that in the past it has struggled with enforcement of such regulations or such rules, and that's why we always, every time, even when the executive said that we will not allow the protesters to arrive or enter the city, they did, and they ended up actually staging a sit-in. Now we have a problem in this country with imagination. Whenever we talk about harsh steps, we forget that after that there will be a tomorrow. For example, political parties can be banned totally as well in this country. It has happened in the past. But do you think that if you are asking for consequences after that, those elements will stop functioning? Right? Today you actually slap a big fine or big punishment to Imran Khan or anybody else for that matter. Will they sit silently? Do you want to actually contribute to more solutions or to chaos? I think that's why the Honorable Court's decision not to pursue the contempt case. By the way, contempt cases are prerogative of the Honorable Court. They can decide. If I do something, and if I do something wrong, they decide they are going to punish me, and then Faisal does the same thing, and the Honorable Court decides that it doesn't want to pursue. It is Honorable Court's prerogative to do that.
But isn't that problematic?
Hang on. But I'm glad that there were not very harsh consequences, because tomorrow, day after tomorrow, we have to live in this country, and it is you and I, the citizens, who will actually face the brunt.
Yeah, Sana,
Yes,
if I'm allowed, I wanted to go towards Ahmed Saab, if he's still with us.
Yes, he is.
Yeah. Ahmed Saab, you hailing from a political party, and of course, previously you were in another party. Just wanted to know, all of these parties, don't you think that they need to sit down together and they need to decide once that here is the red line, and whenever we are coming towards Islamabad, we are not crossing this red line? Because what we saw in past, that of course PTV incident is one of them, and then on Constitution Avenue there are several buildings that were vandalized in the past, and there were buildings including Supreme Court, of course, they were people who got inside and violence were erupted in there. Shouldn't this end now, and there should be a fine red line which should never be crossed? Because right behind Constitution Avenue we have a diplomatic enclave as well, and what kind of message we would be sending throughout the world that this is the type of democracy we are following in Pakistan, sir?
And how do we get out of this
Vicious
dharna
cycle.
politics or container politics that has sort of taken over the country?
And vicious cycle also.
Faisal, first of all, just let me say one statement, that rule of law is not a goodwill. Rule of law has to be regulated and implemented. If we are expecting that someday the political party will sit down and they talk about, I think we need to understand how the thing starts. A political party which by March said that the elections will be held in 2023, the same political party, when the no confidence motion is successful against and they are out of the government, they say no. Now we want early elections. Now this is not a discussion, this is not a debate. How do the political parties sit where one political cult, one political culture only wants what they think is right? They are not listening to anyone else. And that is why in the beginning of the program, I said the political culture, which was started by Tahirul Qadri twice, and it is not twice to the credit of Imran Niazi. And this will continue. This will continue till the time the rule of law is not implemented. If Imran Niazi has committed a contempt of court, of course, it is the jurisdiction of the courts. I'm not suggesting anything, how they have to implement their writ, how they have to conduct themselves in this situation. It is their job, it is their jurisdiction, they will decide about it. But I must say that if a political leader is time and again, he is granted this, that he can come and tear apart the utility bills, which is like mutiny or revolting against the country's system, which is allowed to attack PTV, and he says, yes, acha hai, bahut acha hai, very good. And then yesterday we saw again what all was done. And every time the same political culture, just they get away. There is no law for them. Does it mean that there is no law in the constitution which can regulate a fascist, a political cult who is using public against the public property, against the public safety, and the result we have seen? There is no law that it can be addressed, and this will continue. Let me tell you, sitting together is not a big thing. I mean, every government is always ready to sit together. And this is what happens after 126 Dharna, 126 days Dharna, or Tairul Qadri's previous Dharna, or any other political. At the end of the day, they are sitting together. They are talking. But what the country has lost in that course of time, what the nation has lost. I mean, today, I must say that we are not facing just a political culture. We are facing a political cult. And this political cult is going to destroy our country if we do not wake up to the rule of law. If we do not regulate this thing, we cannot allow any political leader to play with the destiny and fate of the nation and the country.
Very true.
That once his desires are not fulfilled, if he wants chief election commission to be changed, he wants early election. I mean, this country cannot be run like this. Whenever he is out of the government, he wants chaos. When he is in the government, then he is talking about 2023 elections.
Right,
Then he's
absolutely.
talking
Yes,
about
sir,
his
go ahead.
next tenure until
I
2028.
sort of want to agree with the crux of the argument that Ahmed Jawad Saab is presenting. That is not about rule of law. The job of a journalist is to hold a mirror to the society, and this is what I'm going to do. Yesterday, when the videos of trees being set on fire actually surfaced, the people who were actually explaining it were mostly speaking in English. They seemed to be quite educated otherwise.
Yeah.
And that took me back to Maulana Fazlur Rahman's sit-in in Islamabad. If you remember, nothing was burnt at that time. And we have in this society, we have the habit of actually saying that the madrasa children are not perhaps that much civilized, they are not that much educated, they don't have that understanding of civic sense. But here were the people who have no excuse, and they were setting things on fire. So that is a shameful. I agree about this. My only humble submission is not everything is actually dealt legally or through structures. You have to actually focus on the culture as well. The culture of politics will have to change in this country eventually when we want people to actually be more tolerant.
Absolutely. Khosa Saab, in the days to come, of course, we are expecting and we want the dialogue to proceed and for the political party to sit together and for something positive to come out for the country. But again, the situation right now is quite volatile. And right now we're talking about whether or not we can act in a more proactive way to sort of prevent the kind of incidents that took place yesterday. What sort of a role do you think the Supreme Court will be able to play in the days to come to perhaps contribute or help or ensure in one way or the other that actually does happen and that people who acted in ways which are in violation of the law are held accountable?
You see, Supreme Court cannot go beyond the constitutional hierarchy. Supreme Court cannot direct the government to hold elections. Supreme Court cannot jump into the parliament. Supreme Court is there to implement the constitutional issues. So Supreme Court is there for that purposes. And I will again repeat, it is the constitution which says where executive fails or some political party takes the law into his own hands, as what I absolutely agree with my brothers who were absolutely rightly said so. When you are in power, the election should be in 2023. Chief Election Commission is the perfect person. When you are being ousted, then you have a distrust on Chief Election Commission. Then you have a distrust on the people who are appointed or who are holding the portfolio, and you cannot bulldoze the system. Or the time I'm afraid of one thing, that I'm spelling it out loud and clear to my Supreme Court of Pakistan. We need to control the people. We need to control the leaders. Otherwise, there will be a big disastrous situation in front of the
Right,
Supreme
and
Court.
Khosa Sahab,
Or
I'd really like you to also elaborate on what you mean when you say control the leaders and control the people, how that exactly is going to happen. And also, if we don't come towards a dialogue or a negotiation, or we don't come towards a compromise or a solution as to how to proceed forward, and if Imran Khan decides to come to the federal capital again, do you think that the Supreme Court will again allow this protest to happen?
I don't think so. You see, the protest, as per freedom of speech, freedom of right, is a fundamental constitutional legitimate right of every political leader, well, every political party, every citizen of Pakistan. If you see in Hyde Park, they have designated a place where you can have processions, where you can have protests, where you can agitate, but you cannot allow at the sensitive places where there is a diplomatic enclave, where the world is looking at you, how barbarian you are. When you are a prime minister, your theme is different. When you are in the opposition, you are trying to bulldoze everything. So I think so Supreme Court is going to take a suo motu action. If the same pattern is going to continue, which Imran Khan and his party and the workers, and I don't blame public, I blame the leaders. Because if they stop them not to be violent, not to be wild, I swear they will behave properly. We have seen in Fazlur Rahman's procession and other processions, they did not
All right.
harm anything.
All
They
right,
had their
absolutely.
procession,
Unfortunately, we're
and
out of
even
time,
the
Khosa
Supreme
Saab.
Court
So I'll
didn't
just take
stop
one
them.
last question from Ahmed Saab. A quick question, whether or not we're going to be able to see both sides sit together on the table and any sort of compromise or negotiations to come forth. Is there any way, anything that is acceptable by the current government in terms of the demands that the PTI leadership has put forward? Can we see any announcement of early elections or any effort to actually have this dialogue that we're all talking about?
Sana, if the resolution means that yesterday, after burning Islamabad, Imran Niazi made a statement that there should be an announcement of early election in 6 days, and the government should oblige, as a citizen, as an educated person, I would say no. Why? Is this a kind of a country where things have to be dictated by one fascist leader? It has to be run by rule of law.
No,
The
absolutely
rule
not.
of
But
law.
when we talk about the just the timeline, what I meant is whether or not an effort will be made in this regard, irrespective of the timeline.
Yes, Sana, it is up to the allied government. I think they will deliberate. And
All right.
if they think there can be early election, they can always exercise their authority. This authority was with Imran Niazi before March
Right.
2022. He could always dissolve assemblies. He could always hold early
Absolutely.
elections.
Point taken.
But
Thank you
at
very
that
much,
time, he
Ahmed
was in the
Jawad Saab,
government.
for joining us and being a part of
Thank
the
you very
debate,
much.
and also to Mr. Sardar Sher Khosa for being a part of the debate and talking to us with regards to the political situation of the country that we can only hope is going to be better in the coming days. Thank you for watching the debate.